Hey guys, Gibbo here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I created this image of Superman getting eaten alive by Ant-Man minions. Yes, I did get bitten a lot, so let's dive right into this photo. So what I have here, guys, is Superman basically posed as if he is scratching himself to death because he is so itchy or in so much pain from red ants. And there was a red ant's nest here in the grass, and I literally put Superman straight into the red ant's nest, and I tried to make the red ants as agitated as possible. So as you can see, there was about 30 photos I took, and each photo I took, I literally had a trigger on my camera, so I was just firing away. And if I scroll through these pictures, you can just see how there's just various positions of ants all over his body, all over him. I feel just itchy just looking at these photos. The sad thing is when I was putting him in this thing, about 40 ants got in my hand, and let me tell you, it is not a fun place to be with a handful of red ants biting you as if you're a McDonald's burger. It is not cool. But anyway, I achieved the shot. I achieved the amount of photos I wanted because ants were just crawling all over the place. So I needed to combine a number of images together to get a lot of ants all over him. So the way I edited this photo in Lightroom, if you look at the before shot, that's in camera. As I shot it at f9, but I had a 100 macro 2.8 lens, my Canon 2.8 macro. It's a beautiful lens, and I shot it at 1/60th of a second at ISO 100. It was in the middle of the day, and on the left-hand side of the image, I've got a big reflector board. So the light was coming in from the right-hand side, bouncing light on the left. You can see this nice little highlight area on his face, soft light because I've got a big reflector board, and the sunlight is coming in from the right. Oh, look at that ant, chowing his eye. Good luck, Superman. There we go. So the adjustments I made here on this image is I pulled up the contrasts just to bring a little bit more edginess to the photo. You can see there's a bit more contrast. I pulled down my highlights, so there's a little bit more definition up in this area here in the sky. You can see if I pull it down there, but a little bit of definition pulled back in the sky. I pumped up the shadows so the dark areas get a little bit more detail on his chest and on his suit. The blacks, I've pulled back the blacks just so that there's a bit more definition in the darker areas, a little bit more punchiness. And then what I did, as you can see, is I upped my clarity, and all that does is just gives more definition to the overall scene. I literally batch processed all those photos with that effect. You can see here all these images have been batch processed with the same editing I've done, so they all have the same editing. And then what I did is I exported all of these into Photoshop. So let's jump into Photoshop. So here's the starting image I used for my composition. As you can see, there's not a lot of red ants all over Superman, but what I did is I took a whole lot of images and I layer masked over all the areas of where the ants were going to be, and I brought out the ants of where I wanted them to be on his body. And then what I did is I merged all the layers. So if I turn on and off this layer, there are a lot more ants. As you can see, if I zoom in, there's a lot more ants on his body. And because I shot this on a tripod and I was using my trigger, my camera didn't move at all. So I could just fire away as many shots as I wanted and then clone out all the different ants. And I knew that he was going to be on the exact part of the body that he was for the previous shot. So there wasn't an alignment issue. So that's how I brought a lot more ants onto Superman. Next thing I did is I added a little bit of a drop shadow into his mouth just to make it look a little bit dark and deep like a cavern in his mouth. So the next thing I did is I added a layer mask to a curves adjustment layer. I've made the whole curves adjustment layer a bit darker so you can see the overall darkness being brought in, but then with the layer mask I paint back the areas that I don't want to be dark. So if I turn it on and off, you can see just around his body, on his cape, there's a little bit of darkness bringing in from that curves adjustment layer. I then made another curves adjustment layer and I brought it pulling up brightness with that curves adjustment layer. So if I turn that on, you can see I've brought in some more highlights on his chest, his arms. If I turn off the layer mask, you can see how much brighter the whole overall curves adjustment layer will be. But again, with a layer mask clicked on, I can then highlight the areas that I want to show of that bright curves adjustment layer. So you can see here I've done on that fold there of his cape, and this area on his biceps here, on his chest. We click on and off, you can see the difference. Just a little bit of highlights make to that image. Okay, next thing I did is I've got a clip holder that holds my toy in place. I just used a clone stamp, cloned in, took it off, so you don't see that he's being held up by some clip. Brightness and contrast layer, what I've did there is an adjustment, brightness and contrast. I've upped the contrast, you can see up here, I've gone to 33 and I've added the brightness up as well to about 7. So if I turn that on and off, contrast just gives a little bit more punch and a little bit more definition in the background. Next I went to a huge saturation and I pulled down slight bit of saturation because I thought the green was a little bit too luminous. You can see if I turn it off, that's the color of the green there. The next thing we've got is color balance. Now what I've done here is I've added some greens and some blues into the midtones. So if I turn that on, you can see greens and blues just affect the background. It just gives it a little bit more of a cooler look in the background of the shot. If I turn it off, the sun was quite bright, it's quite warm there. By adding a color balance layer, I can then just, in the midtones, which is this area in the back, I can add a little bit of green and quite a bit of blue just to make it a little bit more cool, the color temperature of the image a little bit more cool. And guys, that's basically how I edited the Superman photo. I wouldn't like to be in his position right now because fire ants are not a joke. As I said, I was bitten about 40-50 times on my hand to get this shot. It was a hard price to pay, but I think it was well worth it. Awesome, guys. If you like this video, drop a comment in the link below. And if you head across to my harryhawk.com website, you can see all the photos I've done in the past for my toy photography. But thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.